Hey guys, it's EJ Spurl here. And for the past month now, I've been following this GamerGate thing fairly extensively. And it seems like every day new information is coming out. But every day shots are fired from either those who support the GamerGate movement or those who oppose it. So I've decided to switch things up a little bit from trigger warning and make a few videos exclusively addressing GamerGate. Don't worry though, we're still planning to make videos for trigger warning, but in the midst of what some are starting to call a culture war or consumer revolt, I wanted to take some time to discuss some of the revelations related to it. So here's the thing I've noticed. Both sides are guilty of some of the same things. Most notably is the sensationalism. People are accepting the so-called leaked chat logs from the 4chan IRC, despite the facts that the logs show absolutely nothing supporting the provided argument. I think there was one guy in the chats who tried to suggest that GamerGate wasn't about integrity, and he was largely ignored. Now, the other claims seem to have been taken largely out of context. You see, that's the problem with quote mining. They look good in a news article, but in an actual debate, they get torn apart fairly quickly. But our side's guilty of much the same. Over the past 3 or 4 days specifically, I've seen us jump onto sensationalism. People forget that Zoe Quinn is a pseudonym. That's not her real name. It makes sense then that the charity she donated to for Depression Quest wouldn't have had Zoe Quinn as a donator. But we still claimed victory before the battlefield was even cleared. That doesn't help our cause, guys. Unless something can be independently verified, we need to take it with a grain of salt. And even when something is verified, we need to be careful not to gloat about it. It's unprofessional, and it does more to hurt our image than to help it. As much as I support the idea of creating a professional documentary that examines the claims made by Anita Sarkeesian, screaming, "Fuck you, fuckwad," upon discovering that she never filed a police report with the San Francisco Police Department, does nothing to help the cause. Keep in mind the good things that have come out of GamerGate, people. The Not Your Shield hashtag has proven many of the articles about gamers completely wrong. The idea that we're all bitter white dudes has been thoroughly shredded. And it's important to keep in mind that this battle, as some call it, is being fought on two fronts. We're fighting back with facts, but more importantly, we need to fight back with our images. If we appear unprofessional, you can be damn sure it's going to be used against us. Because, as has been mentioned several times now, we're not organized. We are a loose collective of people online who support the idea of transparency in games journalism. And more importantly, we support an inclusive, overarching gamer community. And what I mean by that is that we can't readily jump onto the us versus them mentality. I think many of us in the argument have actually jumped aboard that train, even myself. But guess what? I was called out for one of my comments on Twitter that I'd made in a period of frustration. And they were right. Referring to the other side as a cult commits to the erasure of all those people who are only being presented with one side of the argument. The people who don't have the time or inclination to read between the lines of what they're being shown. Our focus must not be to attack these people. That only encourages the divide in gamer culture. Our focus must be to include them. To speak to them as if they're human, because they are. And if they refuse to listen, just simply break off the discussion. But if we're patient and we're honest with ourselves and others, we can win them over to look at both sides of the argument. Now, it's clear that we can't use the same tactics they're using. Keep in mind that much of what we're fighting against is a political leaning within publicity. We shouldn't be so focused on individuals. Not Zoe Quinn, not Anita Sarkeesian, not even Patrick Klepek or Lee Alexander. We need to look past them to the persons or groups that are looking over their shoulder, directing their actions. We need to start looking at the publicists that are pushing for this culture war. We need to discern their motivations for doing so. No matter what you might think of Jim Sterling, he was right about at least one thing. We cannot compartmentalize each other. So consider this sort of a rallying cry. We need to be more organized. We need to continue to rally around and support those developers and journalists who have been harmed by the other side of this argument, those who deflect legitimate criticisms and paint them as harassment. But moreover, we need to keep focusing our efforts at policing our own. I'm a big fan of leading by example. In fact, one of the first rules you learn in writing is probably one of the most important, a rule that I've attempted to follow since I wrote my first novel. Show, don't tell. But overall, I think it's important to remember that the goal of GamerGate isn't to win, because by definition, we simply can't. But here's the thing, neither can they. Both sides of the argument are likely here to stay. What we should strive for, however, is consistency. We have identified what we're going for, and all we need to do is stay true to that. We cannot let ourselves get distracted by sensationalism. We cannot start gloating, because even if the battle is won, the war will still persist. But it's also important to remember that this is not a war. This is an argument. An argument that consists of thousands of people across the planet, but an argument nonetheless. It boils down to a difference of opinion in gaming. If people are making claims that can't be verified, it's the duty of every one of us to call them out, especially if they're making the claims in support of GamerGate. We should be questioning the veracity of our own claims every bit as much as we do the claims of Sarkeesian, Alexander, and the others. I personally don't think the industry should be dictated by those with specific political leanings, whether they be liberal or conservative. But furthermore, I don't believe anyone with said leanings should be excluded from conversations unless they attempt to exert control over it. Now, I support Operation Disrespectful Nod. I support contacting the advertisers of companies that have jumped aboard the series of articles attacking and compartmentalizing gamers and demanding that they take action. I support investigation into these people, connecting dots and pointing out evidence of corruption or nepotism. I support looking past them and discovering the publicists and PR firms behind the campaigns against gamers. And if laws have been broken, I support them being held accountable for it. But I support us being vigilant. Vigilance over the claims made by either side is where we should be eternally consistent, because this is how we're going to win. It's not about proving who's better, it's about who has the most consistent argument. We don't have the resources they do, we don't have publicists, we don't have a solid network. The only system we have in place to combat vitriol coming from our side is essentially the honor system. So with that said, let's go forward with a renewed sense of vigor and not make the same mistakes that they're prone to make. Remember, we can do 99 things right and one wrong, and we'll be judged over that one wrong choice. We need to be willing to call ourselves out for doing wrong. Don't give in to sensationalism. Demand proof, even if we want to believe something to be true. Either way, I'll be making a few more videos in this general style. There will be more episodes of Trigger Warning coming up in the near future, and some of them may touch on GamerGate, but keep in mind it usually takes a day or two to do most of the editing. So with the time-sensitive nature of GamerGate, it's better to resort to this style of video. But hey, if you like this video, I do encourage you to go over and check out Trigger Warning, which is kind of a personal project designed to critique various internet subcultures and trends. And if you want to see more, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. My name is EJ Spurl, and I will catch you next time. Thanks.